me in welcoming Professor Alex Taek-Gwang Lee and Professor Chen to the stage. Thank you.
Thank you. Good afternoon. It is my great pleasure to introduce our esteemed plenary speaker for today's session, also the very last plenary talk of this two-day event. Professor Alex Taek-Gwang Lee from Kyung University, South Korea. Professor Lee is a highly respected scholar in the field of cultural studies and currently serves as the Director of Global Center for Technologies in Humanities at Chung University. His academic journey spans multiple continents, including recent roles as a visiting professor at the University of Brighton in the UK and the University of St. Thomas in the Philippines. Professor Lee's work is a fascinating intersection of philosophy, media studies, and technology. He has contributed significantly to discussions on post-media, artificial intelligence, and global capitalism, with notable editorial and authorial works such as The Idea of Communism and Deleuze, Guattari, and Schizoanalysis of Post-Media. His forthcoming monograph, Communism After Deleuze, and The Paradox of Artificial Intelligence, these are two books, are scheduled to publish in January and February 2025, as he told me this morning. This is going to be a good promise to reshape how we think about the subject in the upcoming years. Beyond academia, Professor Lee has also played a pivotal role in international cultural dialogues, serving as an academic advisor for many places. His research projects, supported by prestigious grants, reflect a profound commitment to the understanding the complexity of technology, philosophy, and culture in a rapidly changing world. Today, Professor Lee is going to enlighten us with his talk, Deleuze and Cybernetics. In this lecture, he will explore the fascinating intersection between the philosophical ideas of Deleuze, Lewis Carroll, and the field of cybernetics, particularly how Deleuze's concept can help us rethink the flow of information, control system, and the nature of technology in the contemporary world. We are truly honored to have him with us today. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Professor Taek-Gwang Lee.
Thank you for a kind introduction. And then audiences. Actually, I'm a quite last speaker. I know the task of last speaker, but not sure. I'm a proper person, to wrap up everything that we discussed in this conference. Quite fantastic conference, I'm really honored, and I'm very proud of this kind of conference which held, in National Taiwan University. Because actually I had a sabbatical year, during 2021, in the middle of pandemic. When I arrived everything was shut down, and then I experienced very productive isolation, solitude, and then that is actually my big modification, to finish my book. That's why the book is gonna come up is 2025 is next year. That's why just my big gratitude to the National Taiwan University, in particular the Swachan, and then all assistants here. Okay, just today I'm gonna talk about a bit very undiscussed topic is the Deleuze politics. So whenever actually I told actually my student or my friend, I try to bring in the possibility of a certain political theory from Deleuze and Guattari, and then they always ask me, like a textbook, do they have any practical politics? I think actually Alain Badiou ruined everything, That's why just Alain Badiou said, Deleuze had no, politics, something like that. But when the Badiou said Deleuze has no politics, it means, it doesn't mean, what I mean, that Deleuze politics doesn't mean actually the politics as we imagined. That means that Deleuze has a quite different idea of politics. And then, but actually, Badiou didn't answer, didn't explain more what kind of apolitical politics in Deleuze. Because Badiou said, you would actually remember, Deleuze has no, pure politics. That means a politic of politics, or politic in itself. Deleuze hasn't that kind of politic in itself. And then Deleuze politics is always what? Politics of art, politics of philosophy, politics of women, politics of minority. Always a politic exists as a certain supplement to, is an ontological, stance. I think that is a very core idea of Deleuzean politics. That's why your enemy is the best reader of yourself, always. Enemy is the best reader of yourself. So you must respect enemy. Okay, that's philosophy. So today also, I could deal with that another critique of Deleuze. I think you might be surprised. I think you wouldn't know that. It's Bernard Stiegler. Okay, lots of people believe that Bernard Stiegler is a friend of Deleuze, but my idea is quite different. So Stiegler discussion of automatic society references Deleuze's concept of control society. So actually that is quite mystery why the Stiegler wrote a full paper about the Deleuze control society, and he criticized from the beginning to end, and he criticized the Deleuze concept of control society. But very interesting, because Deleuze said, I'm gonna actually explain later, the postscript to actually control society. This is definitely my Marxist work. Is that actually what Deleuze said? That's why I said quite mystery. So, in his quote, Stiegler criticized Deleuze's understanding of control as modulation, right? So he argues that in the hyper-industrial stage, quote, hyper-control is established through a process of generalized automatization, unquote. Stiegler emphasized the hyper-control of automatic society against the modulation of control society. That means Stiegler seemed to presuppose certain level which could be defined, something else modulation, right? So I gotta show you what is modulation here. So actually modulation is, to some point, is okay, just this is what the Kant, the critical pure reason is the kind of, the doctrine of method, okay? If my actual memory is correct. So kind of appendix to critical pure reason, and then you can find out there the Kant explained to some point quite a cybernetic idea, all right? Rationality, complete itself, and then it became a circuit, and then the fulfilled actually what the Sebastian raised a question in the previous keynote, and then technology as such turned into autonomic system, right? In Kantian sense, the rationality is that is a culmination rationality ended up that kind of self-automatic, system, and that is a Kantian sense of what is a peaceful world. That is to some point, in Hegelian sense, might be an end of history, but anyway, just that is a Kantian sense of utopia. So here you can find out more things related to this concept in modulation. So for Stiegler, what makes the difference between the two types of control is a digital tertiary retention. That means digital third retention, which is the operator of operatorization and makes a short circuit of noetic faculties, theorization, and deliberation. The digital third retention, tertiary retention, is parallel to the analog tertiary retention in the 20th century, which was the operator-operatorization of savoir-vivre, the living knowledge, and the mechanical tertiary retention in 19th century, which was the operator-operatorization of savoir-faire, is knowledge about working or something like that. And then, following these two stages, the digital tertiary retention is the third stage of operatorization, automatization in Stigler's term. Okay? And then he said, in this stance, we lost totally what? Savoir theoretic, that means theoretical knowledge. That means theory no longer possible. Very pessimistic, very dark the analysis of what we actually experience at the moment. So, but the Stigler here you can find out is presuppose digital automation or automatization is a certain too much advanced level of technology, and in which actually our the old the weapon theory or some other criticism or to some point is quite every such a revolutionary power turn into quite powerless reiteration or some actually dissolved in this kind of system. So Stigler, this digital automation is an absolute unthinkable development, fundamentally different from Deleuze analysis of control society. So that's why he actually called this society as a hyper-control society. I don't know what it is, hyper-control, okay? It's actually the more enhanced term, okay? Control society, okay, just the control, right? Everything, control, everyone knows. But hyper-control, So he actually put this hyper on this control, something. So in automatic society, according to him, control undertakes the mechanical liquidation of a discernment. So I think if you have a certain, the concern about this analysis, that means you might have some kind of question. Okay, automatization. Automatization means, system actually achieved its own autonomy. And how is it actually control us? Because technology, achieved its own autonomy. That means a machine could, work itself. How could you influence us? You would have that kind of question. So, of course, actually, the Stigler, not stupid, didn't actually say like that. So, what is stake here is that discernment, which is Stigler regards as the content concept of understanding, is automatized as analytical power that has been delegated to algorithms. So here, actually, Stigler presuppose actually this content discussion of rationality, and then, the Stigler said, this actual rationality is replaced by technological algorithm. What is that? That's why this algorithm gonna what? Rule us. How? Algorithm turn into normative standard, right? This capitalism. So actually, the Stigler tried to analyze this, and actually, the Stigler's the purpose is the same as Deleuze and Guattari did, but I said that Stigler's critique is very mysterious in this sense. Their purpose is the same, but they're actually the perspective on the capitalism is quite different. In my opinion, this difference or distinction arose from their the approach to their different approach to the technology. That's my idea. So I'm gonna actually tell my conclusions sooner or later. So Stigler declares that algorithmic automation determines knowledge through sensors outside of any intuition or experience. This is the way in which the algorithm or some this automation would control us. That means actually the kind of affordance. Affordance is the predictable, predictability of your behavior. Actually the Google, would predict. Now I'm talking about the Deleuze here. and then in Taiwan, Taipei, and then they would collect my, the data, and then they would recommend, next time the flight, cheapest flight to Taipei or something like that, next year. That is what predictability of behavior, and that is exactly actually that they could make a profit these days. These big tech companies does. But still actually, what I mean actually put up this kind of a reality, So endorsing Husserl's concept of retention, Stigler postulates tertiary retention, which modifies relation between primary retentions, psychic retention of a perception, and secondary retention, psychic retention of a memory. In this sense, the new way of a retention is artificially retaining something through the material and the special copying of a mnemonic and temporal element. But I think this argument is also quite problematic because Plato already discussed this problem. Okay, it's letter, invention of letter, and then you could find out lots of indigenous people, and then our ancestors, put lots of some record on it. In particular, in China and then Asia, this area you can find lots of our ancestors. There remained lots of inscription on the rock, something like that. So, but still, of course, Stigler said it's a new technology, digital technology. The accelerated this kind of the retention of a memory, but it's also it would cause lots of controversy because some engineer said, scientist said, or technician said the best way you actually reserve your record on certain material is that to write on paper with pencil, not the hard disk, not the Google server, no in iCloud, that the best way to keep your actually record is to use the primitive tool. That is the best way. But of course, actually, Stigler acknowledged that one. But in this sense, Stigler said, artificially retaining something through the material and special copying of a mnemonic and temporal element is enhanced by this digital automation. So what does that mean? That is our purpose of life. That is actually the reason why we are doing social media. Always record, taking picture. That is only purpose these days. So, to some point, tertiary retention is necessary for the construction of society through process trans-individuation. Still, Stigler claims that rise of digital technology marks short circuits, the collective secondary retention and the protection, the possibility of expectation. So I already explained this one. So what is increasing in Stigler's argument is his emphasis on the link between tertiary retention and prioritization. So he took this term, prioritization, of course it's a Marx term, Marx. The technical retention is always pharmacon, toxic, at the same time, medicine which requires particular therapeutic prescription. Therefore, digital automation is a new pharmacon causing the largest stage of prioritization. What are these therapeutics for any toxic pharmacon? Stigler points out, attainment of new knowledge through the second moment of technological shock that is always provoked whenever a new form of a tertiary retention appears. That means new technology always bring in the new dimension of retention. What does that mean? You actually became obsessed in the recording. And then this recording would produce new knowledge. That is actually the way in which knowledge turns into nothing. Think about today's ChatGPT. Students submit, essay done by the ChatGPT. ChatGPT is ruining higher education at the moment. That means knowledge lost its own ontological condition. And even at my university, I'm very interestingly, actually my university didn't get any agreement, from the faculty, and then they actually put this ChatGPT on the online campus. So if you get access to my university online campus, you can use ChatGPT 4, up-to-date ChatGPT anytime. That means actually the university encouraged the student to use the ChatGPT, ruining higher education. Attacking knowledge itself. This is very schizophrenia, schizophrenia. Of course, actually, I'm gonna explain it. In Deleuze Guattari sense, schizophrenia not like this, okay? Different one is more like influenced by the Gregory Basin, all right? So what are these therapeutics for any toxic pharmacologists? According to Stigler, this second moment is equivalent to the phenomenological epoche. And then the hyper-control technology, whose only component is big data, is constantly disintegrating its redoubling. From this perspective, Stigler draws a thick line between his concept of a hyper-control society and Deleuze's concept of simple control society. And then he presupposed by doing a qualitative difference between automatization and modulation, right? So he argued like this. The hyper-industrial situation takes what Deleuze called society of control, founded on modulation by the mass media, to a stage of hyper-control generated by self-produced personal data, self-collected and self-published by people themselves, whether knowledge or otherwise, and exploited by applying high-performance computing to these massive data sets. End quote. First of all, the hyper-control society ruled by the algorithmic governmentality of the internet. That's what actually, that's the point Stigler tried to make, and then distinguishing himself from the Deleuze. To simplify, if you allow me to simplify Deleuze, the Stigler's point, is Deleuze didn't know the internet. Okay? I know the internet. So, for Stigler, digital technology unifies all different automatisms. And the unprecedented aspect of its unification is that, quote, it allows articulation between all these automatisms, technological, social, psychic, and biological, and this is the main point of neuromarketing, neuroeconomics, end quote. Stigler bemoans this automatized disintegration and tries to bring forth the alternative to the total robotization. Here he criticized Deleuze's strategy for resistance. Sorry for Daniela. He criticized the resistance, and then to invent art of control. That is exactly what is Deleuze, the important political strategy, art of control. You must invent art of control. It's inverting, control. How can you actually invert control? You can invent art of control. I'm going to explain that later, soon. For Deleuze, the invention of art is the inverting of control. However, unlike Deleuze, who describes the invention as a resistance, Deleuze actually described invention of art as a resistance. Stigler regards it as a technological categorization and argues that therapeutic for digital pharmacon would emerge from a new history of art, new individuation of art, by which art should become us again. In my opinion, this criticism reveals Stigler's misinterpretation of Deleuze and theoretical problem with his perspective on automation because his Heideggerian approach to technology. Why he said, that we must create. He doesn't say that we must create art of control, but Stigler said what? We must create the new law of art. Us, this is quite opposite position to Deleuze. If you read in a logical sense, you can find out how Deleuze understood the law, relationship between law and art. That means experience. All right. Law doesn't know experience. We cannot experience a law. What we can do is just simply declare law and then apply the law onto the empirical dimension. That is paradox. That's actually what Deleuze says. So Stiglitz' position is quite opposite. In my opinion, quite reversed one. We must create a law. I don't know how to actually invent it without any experience. You know? So here, in my own opinion, is a very different idea. It comes up in the from the Stiglitz critique of Deleuze. So Stiglitz insisted that the invention of us is the epistemological transition from fact to law, but the Deleuze concept of artistic invention designates ontological becoming or some double bind in the Bateman's the concept of cybernetics, becoming ontological becoming out of technological generalization. That means actually in my opinion, Deleuze's approach to technology is more immanent and more ontological. Of course, this ontological always coming along with the epistemological dimension. The more like naturalistic, the opinion there is neither ontological nor epistemological, but naturalistic, the approach here. That means technology is always internalized or immanent in nature. That's why he talked about the ritornello, The bird, even, the worm, even the mushroom has technology to survive in this circumstance. So that's why I think, in my opinion, okay, Susanna, your keynote is fantastic, and then I love that kind of position. But in this position, we could say we shouldn't pursue the advancement of technology, but change the paradigm of technology. That's important. We must change our perspective onto technology. That is the only way, in my opinion, revolutionize status quo. So, as far as I understand, that is a Deleuzian, concept of revolution. So, let's get it. So, how should we interpret Stiglitz' critique of Deleuze in light of recent technological development? I don't want to say that we should reject Stiglitz. I don't want to say like that. He has different idea, okay? And then, so the foundation of Stiglitz' criticism can be better understood when viewed through the lens of modern artificial intelligence advancements, particularly the widespread adoption of connectionist AI models. So I'm going to show you that. I think this is here. We actually discussed, already. We have discussed already the artificial intelligence, and then we had two kinds of artificial intelligence today. Mostly like cybernetic belong to the symbolic AI. And now we have quite different AI. That is a connectionist AI, which was invented by the Rosenblatt. But at the same age, there were many different groups actually mobilized by United States to defeat Japan and Nazi. They actually mobilized. Since then, actually we have this kind of some scientific paternity, and then this what is a theoretical foundation of today's technocracy. So I don't want to get into this one, restrict myself because of a short time. So here I want to explain for your understanding. So what actually the Deleuze talk about in terms of cybernetic is more like a Guattari, good old-fashioned AI. And then my idea is a little bit, what kind of the alternative idea to today's AI? I think this is actually partly my solution. How can we actually reinvent Guattari? Not the isolate yourself from the technology, and then how can use technology in a different way? Quite a Simondonian actually idea. So connectionist AI, get that? This left is the connectionist AI, all right? And the perceptron Rosenblatt has made this concept, Now this one is turning to actually the theoretical foundation of today's AI. ChatGPT, LLM, and then in the computer vision, and then see that you can see that what kind of difference between the Apple. Okay, the symbolic AI is cybernetic. Apple would be what is classified by some kind of the terminology or some like a dictionary. Okay, Derrida criticized in that some diphthong, something like that, as a classification based on the glossary. That means actually symbolic classification. But here the connectionist AI, it doesn't have any meaning, only data. Mathematical data exist. That's why actually what the Noam Chomsky criticized, the ChatGPT. It doesn't think. Of course, actually today AI doesn't think. Originally, actually Robert Wiener, Claude Shannon was not really interested in this one, but Robert Wiener and then John von Neumann and then this early, the scientists, these mathematics and engineers dreamed about the thinking machine. But today's actual AI, in my opinion, it doesn't think. It doesn't think. It emulates our thinking. All right? That exactly what happened is what as what the Stigler described quite in dark way. So it became a reality. So and then this is the deep learning, and that's why symbolic AI is just one of these part. One of this part is quite different category. You can find out. This is a meaning of cybernetic. And then here, and then this is machine learning. Sorry about this. And then this one is another model. A lot of people today actually we discussed the LLM model is a large language model, and then because of ChatGPT and OpenAI. But actually, the major part of AI technology actually indebted by this the article, Mataruna, and then the Walter Pitts, and then the Warren McCullough is a little bit freaks. Actually, they found out this article was published in 1940, all right, 1940, during the Second World War, because they had a lot of money. That's why they could get into the useless topic like this. They studied the frog. They studied frog, and then they found out frog's eye, neuron system. Frog's eye, the sensory system is connected to the brain. This became the theory of today's AI. That is what computer vision. Computer vision. Actually, this is, I think I'm going to show you why this is important. Okay, this is image net. That's why image turn into data, all right? Image turns into, because the image contains lots of data. If you take a picture, you don't need to actually explain it. Simply, you can display it. And then nowadays, we have a smartphone. If you take a picture, what happens? It would contain location, data. And then when you actually get there, lots of data was included in that photo. So, and then you actually, without any notice, simply upload that, the photo on the internet. What happened? ImageNet, collected that one and then made some archive. And then provide, this, data for what? AI developer. This is actually the communism, communism, AI communism, I think, they don't pay us. We upload, they don't pay us. So, here, analog and then digital. Okay, so I think, this is a cybernetic model. And then, you can find out. This one is, just Robert Wiener make this cybernetic model, all right? So, so connectionist AI, exemplified by deep learning and neural networks, has largely overcome the limitation of a traditional symbolic AI, cybernetics, according to engineers. The shift in AI paradigms offers a compelling parallel to the philosophical debate between Stigler and Deleuze. The historical stage that Stigler calls hyper-control society coincides with the rise of connectionist AI. correct. He actually found very actually, the precise, concreteness of that, the AI development. And then he found out, what actually the kind of AI and technology would cause. That is what it said. So Stigler's argument can be understood by recalling Marx's definition that each historical period has the machinery of its time. So Marx said, each period, each historical period has its own machine, all right? And Stigler thought our age would have AI. So Stigler regards Deleuze's concept of control society as a limited understanding of automation based on cybernetics, and he seems convinced that current technology is dominated by the automation of connectionist AI. At first glance, Stigler's epochal division sounds plausible, all right? Makes sense, and it seems to explain the emergence of AI in a way that might be described as a Marxist approach. He even borrows Marx's own term, proletarialization, to describe the implication of this shift. However, in Postscript on the Society of Control, which was first published in 1990, Deleuze clearly defined control society as the historical byproduct of the Second World War. His concept resonated with the Foucault's notion of a society of sovereignty, the disciplinary society, and anticipated the later concept of biopolitics. So according to Deleuze, what is essential in controlling society is code. In contrast, the signature for naming an individual and administrative numeration for indicating a unique position within a mass is crucial in disciplinary societies. The code is a password, which is set numerical language of control. The password is different from watchwords of disciplinary society, in that the codes are about the right to get access to information. Unlike Stigler's understanding of digital automatism as the cause of proletarianization, Deleuze stresses the link between the society of control and financialization, which drives the individual to divide it into data. So Deleuze also had, recognition of a problem of data, which actually dissolved individuation, all right? So this dissection of the individual is nothing else than the crisis of liberal governmentality regulated by political economy. In this sense, Deleuze's concept of control is related to the paradigm shift from industrial capitalism to financial capitalism, and Stigler's criticism of Deleuze is suspicious. Because Deleuze already, recognized the connection between technological development, that means digital, the technology, and the financial capitalism. Now we actually have this combination, all right? If you use, OpenAI's ChatGPT, how do you pay? You should pay by dollar, United States dollar, You would think I pay the Taiwanese dollar. No, it's the United States dollar, And the Netflix, and the many actually, service, if you use, mostly actually what? Produced by American big tech company. And then you should pay what? United States dollar. That's why we have strong United States dollar system. That's why China was suffered from this dollar-oriented system. This is true. So, apart from his presupposition, Deleuze's concept of a society of control is not about modulation of a mass media, I think this is quite, that's why I said quite mysterious, because Deleuze never said like this. The situation of globalization in which capitalism is no longer involved in production except in the third world, the global capitalism. Deleuze pointed out the problem of global capitalism. That means, technology is not equal, okay? Technology is not equal. Technology is always hierarchical. Actually, here is Guattari and Argonne, you always talk about, the inequality of technology. Africa is not easy to get access, the ChatGPT. If you don't have any dollar system, you cannot use, this system, this technology. So Deleuze already recognized this one. I think very materialistic approach, and the more Marxist approach, than the Stigler, in my opinion. Because Stigler's concept pre-eternalization, it sounds very Marxist, but very suspicious. It's a pre-eternalization of knowledge. What does that mean? So Deleuze described this as higher order production, which can be grasped today as global value chains. In this stage of global capitalism, what it wants to sell is services and what it wants to buy is stocks. Very correct. However, another point Deleuze makes here is that there is no clear distinction between society of sovereignty and society of control, because older methods will return to the fore, but with the necessary modification, therefore what Stigler calls the hyper-control society's necessary modification of a former control society. That means if hyper-control society exists, it doesn't mean a hyper-control society more advanced society than the control society. It's a over-coded society, over-coded. So Stigler easily ascribes Deleuze's concept of control as something adequate to analog technology, but Deleuze already deals with the digital problem in his discussion of Cézanne. For Deleuze, digital is related to the use of geometry. I already showed that, the theoretical foundation of AI, the symbolic AI, and then connectionist AI, both, based on what the geometry, the structure. So even Marvin Minsky said, what is AI? According to him, he's actually, the outstanding mathematician of AI industry. He said, the AI is computational geometry. And then Deleuze know that. And then, very strangely, Deleuze connect this idea to his analysis of painting. So lots of archive, actually, now you can find out Dan's, Purdue University homepage, seminar on painting. It's fantastic. He didn't actually talk about a lot, painting, but strangely, seminar. And he actually discussed the cybernetics. That is very strange, but that is very correct. That is exactly how Deleuze understood, cybernetics. Is image, painting, and then what? Assemblage. So Deleuze, Paul Deleuze, Cézanne's motif or diagram, this is very important, diagram, I think he gave already how to, deal with this problem, One of that concept, of course, he actually gave us lots of concepts, but more like an analytic concept, more like analysis. But sometimes he gave us certain, tactical, concept, or practical concept. That is diagram. I think the diagram is one of the actually very practical concept. So, diagram, or some Cézanne motif or diagram, is the perfect example of art of control. He already gave us, the answer to Stigler's question, or some Badiou's question. What kind of polity do you have? He said, like this, out of control. And how can we actually bring in this out of control diagram? And then another word, modulation, right? This is Shannon's one. Okay, I think this idea is better related to the the Gregory Bateson. Gregory Bateson is made this cybernetics of cybernetics, and also I already explained that he actually made the double bind. The schizophrenia. The Deleuze Guattari wrote 2 volumes of the capitalism and schizophrenia. It doesn't mean quite unlike common understanding of this title. It doesn't mean capitalism is just a schizophrenia. It doesn't mean like that. Their concept schizophrenia is not like a psychoanalytic term, but too much close to anthropological term. It's a Gregory Bateson term. According to Gregory Bateson, the human language system or human actual mind as such what? Based on this schizophrenia. That is a way in which how we can have structure is in the Levi-Strauss sense, binary system. For instance, actually, you would experience very nice one, you know. For instance, actually, the very interesting Basin, you know, took the example of alcoholic. For us, alcoholics is a bad guy, but the poor alcoholic as such, alcoholism as such is what? Heroic practice of his life. Do you understand? And then he actually analyzed why actually these alcoholic guys, you know, thought himself as quite a heroic figure, resisting actually that kind of social order. Very interesting. And then he said, actually, once you're taking alcohol as a good thing, and then you must take another one. That means sobriety, you know, sobriety or sober state as a bad thing. Just like that, you know, that is actually alt-right wings, you know, the actual concept is a strategy. They actually, you know what, posit the good one first, and then through that, you know, good one, and then they keep inventing what? Bad one. You know, if actually anything cannot be embraced by a good one, everything revealed as bad one. That is actually what you know, the Basin said in terms of schizophrenia. It's not a psychoanalytic term. It's not a psychoanalytic term. It's not a psychosis. So that's why I saw the lots of, you know, criticism about, you know, this concept, you know, from the perspective of psychoanalysis. But in my opinion, you know, is quite suspicious. Okay. So here you can find out. So modulation, in my opinion, the modulation, this concept as such is coined by the Le Corbusier, is an architect, you know, in other words, modular. And then look at that, see this? He actually rejected, you know, Le Corbusier rejected the modern standard of measurement, and he insisted that our body is a measurement. Our body as such is a standard for the architecture. So that's why he what? Is universal and at the same time quite particular and concrete. Do you understand? Of course, a human-centric idea, but anyway, it is structuralism. But anyway, that is exactly actually what the Le Corbusier's thought, you know, in terms of modulator or modular. And then here, this is Le Corbusier invented, you know. This image would reminds of something, you know, like this. Cézanne. This is my clue. You know, this is quite coincidental. Why actually Deleuze talk about modulation, and he discussed the Cézanne, and then finally, quite dramatically, he connected, you know, Cézanne's painting to what? Cybernetics. This is very interesting. So here, in my opinion, the Deleuze, you know, try to bring in some kind of very, you know, the affirmative, you know, tactic of politics, not quite, you know, negative sense of a politics like a Hegelian, you know, the dialectic. Here, actually, you know, he said, you know, this idea of why does, you know, Deleuze call this different use of geometry the middle way? So he actually said, you know, the modulator would produce the middle way, you know, which implies radical invention and the destruction of figurative coordinates as the other ways. So why does he say so? It is because the art form is independent of Cézanne, you know. Cézanne drew it, but that form as such doesn't belong to Cézanne. This idea of a middle way as the art of control is opposed to Stigler's tertiary retention, because actually the Stigler's concept is a phenomenology. It means actually Deleuze was quite, you know, opposed to phenomenology, because phenomenology always presupposes the pure self. Okay, and you know that actually the Basin also quite hostile to the, you know, the European sense of self. Self is a cybernetic, you know. So here is very interesting, and then so here he argues that, then Deleuze argues that the digital automatization is the essential cause of proletarianization. That I know is Stigler said. So Stigler argues that digital automatization is an essential cause of paternalization, but fails to provide us with its solid ground. Rather, this argument shows Stigler's bias towards technological determinism. So actually, this is actually my idea anyway. So Deleuze confirmed that his discussion of the societal control is entirely Marxist. I already told you. Even though Marx could not deal with the subject matter, the Deleuze clearly defined the control society as a historical byproduct of the Second World War. All right. So, okay. So here and then I already actually discussed it. Then after Second War, what happened? Of course, yes, technocracy and the pragmatism became dominant, and also, it actually ended up with the global capitalism and neoliberalism. And then Deleuze actually embraced this historical, change. Of course, Deleuze didn't say, this kind of historical change means, the historical development, historical progress. What he wanted to do is, in my opinion, is challenging this kind of linear sense of time. He actually once said, time is not progressive. Time is interrupted. So. I think the time is running out. I'm very obsessed in time now at the moment. So, all right. So, with this idea, modulation, okay, so here is a diagram, Do you know what does that mean? It's Kant, okay? The Guattari made the diagram about Kant, all right? And then this one is a despotic, the faciality, how despotic faciality build is what it look like. And here, all right? And there are many things. And then think about that. Actually, one day, actually, I encountered this strange image. This actually image called, what is described in this image is called the cargo cult. Cargo cult, okay? I try to explain the meaning of a modulation, okay? What does that mean is a different use of technology. Actually, that idea is from Simondon, is borrowed from Simondon. But Deleuze, criticized Simondon. Simondon's, the theory is too much normative, What does that mean is it must actually open is a very revolutionary use. It must actually, that means Simondon's idea too much normative. That means how to use technology in healthy way, okay? Of course, actually, Deleuzean concept of health is a little bit different, but how to use the technology beautifully, something like that. That is, I think, to some point is the theoretical limitation of that ontogenesis, something like that. Ontogenesis is always about well-being, something like that. But of course, Simondon didn't intend, to bring in that kind of well-being, technological theory. But anyway, that's why Deleuze tried to bring in, against this kind of normative aspect of Simondon's theory, heretic use of technology. That is, in my opinion, his concept of modulation. So here you can see that the tribe in the Papua New Guinea, that means the Pacific Island, they actually, believed, the airplane is the bird sent by their gods. But that airplane, because the airplane always gave the certain place, some people, and then lots of cargo. That means the commodity or lots of the useful thing. But this signal, according to actually that mythology, this signal to some point is interrupted by white people's some evil spirit. That's why this bird is the god's bird was kidnapped by white people. That's why they decided we actually built this the aircraft on our island, and then this aircraft would find out this place is the place, and then gonna be actually landed on this island. So they made this one. And what about this? This is okay, just a phone, right? The mobile phone. And then, of course, actually mobile phone, but to some point quite useless phone. You cannot use it as a phone. Just like what Papua New Guinea people did, actually these people did. We wouldn't say, this tribe actually the behavior is very stupid, From the some modern man's perspective, okay, it looked quite stupid, but actually their logic is very precise, very plausible, and then very concrete, and their purpose is very precise. What I mean. So this is what I mean. So the modulation means actually deterritorize that technology, and then deterritorialization also can be modulated for different purpose. That means if you wanna invent different purpose, that means we can find out out of control like this. It looked quite useless. And then yesterday Dan showed us the classification problem. Actually according to the perspective, hammer and the log and the saw, and then depending on the different perspective, people classified that thing quite different way. So Deleuze said, in his cinema seminar, very interesting. Deleuze said, the classification is different from ordering. Ordering is different from classification. So what global capitalism try to do actually on us, in terms of control, is the classification. What kind of actually people you could be classified, all right? And then modulation to some point is ordering. Ordering, like a poet, yeah, it's a poetical transposition. You can reorder, that flow, right? That is exactly, actually, in my opinion, the Deleuzian practical tactical politics. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor Lee. I think we are running out of time. So for Taxi, can we just invite one questions from the audience, please? Yes.
This is the Deleuze and Guattari conference. So I was thinking the way I would respond to your caricature of Stiegler is to perhaps ask you how Stiegler would work with Guattari. And if you were to put thinking about modulation, and Guattari says many things about modulation, and the universe is a reference which are opened up because of that, then Stiegler would find that Guattari and Stiegler would be fellow travelers on the question of technology. So what do you think about that?
In the beginning of my talk, as I already said, the critique of a certain philosopher would reveal the truth of that theory, which would be suggested by the philosopher. So that's why I already apologize. I think that Stiegler's critique of Deleuze is quite mysterious, according to your own, the quotation of the anecdote. But in my opinion, Stiegler's problem is that his conceptualization of technology, and then his own, the idea of technology too much phenomenological, and then also too much Heideggerian. Heideggerian approach to this technology caused lots of problems. Why? Always based on the negative, the classification of good technology and bad technology. All right? Just like that, don't use the Google map, and then instead you must use paper map. That might be better for your life, or that might give you opportunity to enjoy your life, more decent way, or in beautiful way. That is a Heideggerian position. So I think actually that couldn't give any solution to technology. That is my idea. So that's why I desperately dig into this topic, because now we experienced, that kind of realization of European Enlightenment. And then European Enlightenment, in my opinion, is reached at its own self-cancellation. Finally defeated by capitalism. That's what I'm thinking. So we had, possibility to change this world, but this world is already changed. I don't think actually this world is too much change or too much actually change rapidly. I don't think this world is already changed. Never changed after 1990. That's what I'm thinking. So after neoliberalism is that this whole world is changed. Actually, if you, for instance, when people, until the end of 1990, visiting a certain country like, some Ethiopia. I was in Ethiopia in 1990, late 1990. Actually, that people, quite different problem I met in my life. But these days, if you travel any place, even Ethiopia, even, the Zimbabwe, even, any place in Latin America, same lifestyle. They're watching the same movies, stupid, K-pop, dancing the same, the gesture. That is what I mean. It's the end of history. We experience end of history, and then, but already the philosopher like the Foucault and Deleuze, and then just Stigler and many the philosopher already anticipated this kind of world would arrive soon, and now we actually get into this reality. So now we must reread their text. Of course, that is not coherent. Their text is not coherent. If you read it, even like a Marx, Capital is not completed work. So then Fred Jameson said, Capital cannot be completed, always unfinished. So I think that those the philosophical project will be unfinished. That's why we organize this kind of conference, and we keep discussing concept. And then, in my opinion, as for his own, politics, I think his concept, too much underestimated. That's what I'm thinking. Lots of people dealt with this concept as an aesthetical, sense, but in my opinion, in delusional sense, aesthetic is definitely a political one. So very similar to the Taek-Gwang say, So I think we should, properly deal with this concept from the perspective of affirmative politics. That's actually my purpose.
I think allow me to use the privilege as a moderator. Let's invite one more question. Also, the last question from the audience. Questions or comments?
Even though we are attempting to modulate current course, we almost have to take sort of reversing order as long as we are settled with sort of all this capitalism. And I do enjoy capitalism in a way. I do feel comfortable with this system. But I do feel uncomfortable sort of taking this sort of pessimist course. But again, taking Susanna's idea, worrying about sort of climate machine, we are in a way having empowered to get this world worse. But again, we are all as well empowered to get this world better. Or that requires sort of a political decision supported by common people. That's my comment.
The modulation doesn't belong to our will or our, certain subjectivity. It's modulation is a kind of assemblages, and then already immanent in this world. Like, the Bateson said, the quite neither ontological nor epistemological. It's quite naturalistic. It's like a bird, or it's like a worm. Even the material. That is what I mean. We are already belong to this nature, and that we are actually to some point, the part of this modulation. Everything is not modulating at the moment. That is what Le Corbusier said. You don't need any artificial measurement. We have a measurement. For instance, sorry about this. Actually, sorry. So there is some island, and then actually I saw this documentary, a certain documentary, BBC documentary, and then James Cook, arrived there, and then they taught, the indigenous people how to build, the sail boat, and they still making the sailboat without any blueprint. How could it be possible? That is modulation. That's why actually this technology doesn't belong to us. Technology as such, formality. So in this sense, the logic of sensation, this is Francis Bacon. This is nothing, to some point, a very interesting book. I think a very important book. We must reread, from this perspective. Is a cybernetic and technology. Very nice book, to discuss, the how to actually, bring together analog technology and digital technology. So very interesting. So, and then how can we actually, understand, art from that perspective? So I think Deleuze discussed a lot, and then, so I think this is what I'm thinking. So modulation already, the part of this poem.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry we're running over time, and that's our thank you for all the participation and the feedback. And one more time, thank you, Professor Alex Taek-Gwang Lee. Thank you.